I'm Mrs. Diath, and I'm going to read for you a section of Windrush Child by Benjamin Zephaniah. So the Windrush was a ship that docked in Tilbury in Essex in 1948, bringing lots of people from Jamaica and other Caribbean islands to England to work to fill the labour shortages following the Second World War. The main character's dad in this story has come to England on this Windrush ship when the character was a baby, and he has not met his dad, doesn't remember his dad, because he has been left in Jamaica with his mum and his grandma. I'm going to start at chapter 3. Although my dad wasn't there, my earliest memories of growing up in Jamaica were fun and carefree. I felt safe and loved. The weather was always fine in Maroon Town, and it was safe. The roads were not good enough for cars to drive fast, so the most dangerous thing on the roads were the cows. Sometimes they would block the roads in small groups, or if they got angry, they would run after people. They ran after me a few times, but I would never let them catch up with me. Like most black people in Jamaica, I didn't have a lot of money, but I never felt poor. In fact, I never saw how rich people lived until Mum got a job cleaning a big house up in the hills. She took me there one day before I went to school, and I was shocked at what I saw. When Mum opened the big gate and the big red brick house was still far away, then as we walked towards it, 2 big dogs ran in our direction, barking angrily, but Mum called their names and they calmed down. As we reached the house, a Jamaican man came out. He was very thin and old, and when he smiled, I could only see 4 teeth in his mouth. "This is Walter," said Mum. "Him is the caretaker. Him look after all the land and do all the handiwork. This is my son, Leonard," she said to Walter with pride. Walter reached out to shake my hand. I had never shaken anyone's hand before, but I knew what to do. I reached out too, and we shook hands. "How are you, young Leonard?" he asked. "I'm fine, sir," I replied. "Do you live in this big house, sir?" I asked, looking beyond him to the house. "No," he replied with a smile. "I live in a small little hut at the back. I just fix things that need fixing." "His English people live here," said Mum. "Them doing business in Kingston, so them away for a few days." Walter went to work trimming trees with the dogs following him, and Mum took me into the house and quickly showed me around. The floors were all covered with white marble tiles. The furniture was dark brown oak, and the walls were covered with paintings of old white people with curly white wigs. At the back of the house was a large swimming pool, and beyond the swimming pool were the trees. I could see part of a building through the trees, and Mum told me that was where Walter lived. "This is how rich people live," she said. "The couple who own this house have a house in England, a house in Australia, and a house in Jamaica. I come here once a week, and Walter is here all the time, and I only see the couple a few times a year. Them always on the move, them have money." She looked at the clock on the wall and shouted, "School!" We left the house and she rushed me down to the garden gate, and from there I ran to school. I had heard some people talking about how rich white people lived, but even after seeing it I wasn't impressed. I couldn't understand why 2 people could live in such a big house and then not spend much time there. Then I thought maybe this is how all people lived in England. Could they all have friends who were kings and queens? Did they all travel all over the world? Did they all live in big houses with lots of land? In England, my dad found a job as a bus driver. He was always writing and telling us what he was doing, and that made me want to see him even more. I used to think about how good it would be if he was the driver in Jamaica. I couldn't imagine him driving people around who were friends of kings and queens and lived in big houses, but he was earning enough money to send some to us every few months. We loved getting and sending letters to Dad, but back then it really took time. If we wanted to write, we had to use special blue airmail paper. The paper would have to be folded into its own envelope, and then someone, usually me, would walk down to town to post it. It would then be put with letters from other parts of the island and taken to the airport. A plane would leave for England just once a week, and when it arrived in England, the post would be sorted into London. From London, it would then be sent to Manchester and then posted through Dad's letterbox. If we were lucky, it would take 2 weeks. Dad had to do the reverse if he wrote to us, but he told us he lived near a post office. We weren't rich. I didn't think we needed much because I was never hungry, and I felt as if I lived in a very special place. The only thing I really lacked was my dad. Everyone took care of me, but I still missed and wanted my dad. And I missed him most of all when I saw the other children playing with their dads. It wasn't jealousy. It just felt like something was missing from my life, but I just kept reminding myself that Mum said he would come back soon, and I wasn't sure what soon meant, but I was really looking forward to that day. So that's Windrush Child by Benjamin Zephaniah, which I actually borrowed from your library. So if you wanted to finish it and find out what happens to Leonard and his dad, it's up there in the library. I hope you enjoyed my reading of Windrush Child.